Morning, everybody. I'm absolutely flattered that there's so many people here and so many lovely familiar faces as well. Thank you, kind friends, for coming along and helping me feel a little bit more comfortable. Polly's said who I am. My name's Robin. I work under the guise of Rednine. It is only me, but I do collaborate with a lot of people. There's a couple that's in this room here, and kind of share and build brand stories for a number of clients. This is what should have happened a couple of months ago. Anybody that did try and dry off the huskies and get out here, I was here, but there wasn't that many that turned up, so we decided to move the date on to today. This was the last day that I was actually here, the only significance that these 6 numbers mean absolutely nothing to you, but mean a lot to me because that was the day that I kind of pushed my boundaries. And as my personal brand, I realised that I had to kind of take it a little bit more seriously, I guess, and kind of start talking about what I do, because I'm one of those people that whenever anybody says, so what do you do? I go, well, I don't really know. It just kind of works. And I wonder if there's a kind of, a couple of nodding heads in this room. You just plow on each day and you kind of think, yeah, it works. It brings the money in. It kind of gets me in front of people. So 6 insignificant numbers to anybody else, but kind of part of my brand story. So it was 2 years, 4 months and 30 days ago. But thanks to the snow, it's plus 92 days. Now, all I can say is in those 92 days, so much has changed. I had 2 really significant changes in my kind of approach to Rednine. One was a chairman's niece told the chairman that she thought the creative aspect of their website was misaligned. This was something I'd been banging a drum on for 3 months with them, and it took the chairman's niece to kind of pop a little mention in their ear, and I kind of thought, well, hold on a minute, this is back to, I don't actually tell anybody what I do. So the chairman's niece has kind of got it right, really. She's the one that's going out there and physically saying it. So just short way, really, to get me to slide 3, because I was told last time, once I get to slide 3, I'll actually chill down a little bit. So that was just a long, convoluted way to actually get to the presentation. So this is something that Anita Roddick, sadly no longer with us, but founder of the Body Shop. That means so much to me. That is exactly where the brand lives, and that is exactly where stories live. And for me, it's been something that's been kind of evolving over a number of kind of months now, that brands really are just stories. They live in our minds, and we tell these stories, and we share these stories, and we relate these stories. So it's kind of these 3 elements in terms of, if you approach your brand and try and remember how you relate or work out how you relate to others, then they will remember that story and they will retell that story, and that's key to how your brand will evolve. So the first thing to really think about is, what is your why? And I don't know if anybody's kind of worked in the sort of brand arena, that's the key. There's a book that you can buy off the shelf, which is called Start With Why, and it's kind of my Bible, really.
Cynic.
Pardon?
Cynic.
It is, yeah. When you think about it, we're all personal brands as well, and we all have to relate. We all relate to other people, we all relate to our friends, and we have to relate to ourselves. So it's really important to understand what your why is, and to think about why you exist as well. What purpose are you going to serve? Because there's no point in sort of sitting in your sort of office silo and think, yeah, I've got it, I've nailed it, I've got this new app, or I've got this new event, or I've got this new product. But if it doesn't relate to anybody, if there's no relevance to their lifestyle, then it really will find that it'll be quite a difficult path for it to be able to move forward. And then once you've got that relationship kind of agreed in your head, and you know that your audience are starting to kind of evolve, then they'll remember it and they'll start to take that forward, and then they'll take that story to another friend or another associate or another company, and they'll start to retell that story. And that's, for me, where you don't let go of your brand, but you do have to have that trust that that your audience is going to impart it to others, they're going to talk about it in their way. And I think that's a key area where then you have to listen to that audience. You have to then work out how you're going to knock some of the edges off it. Don't be so predefined about how you thought it needed to be, but work out how you can kind of evolve it and let it grow into how it will be into how it will be shared within the sort of the bigger marketplace. Oops, sorry. So what is key? What is your story? Does it have highs and lows? Does it have light and shade? Is it emotional? Does it have interest? Does it have intrigue? So think about all the kind of stories that you already know about. Something that kind of interested me lately, and something that I kind of do as a sort of personal philosophy, is to write my best story. So I travel a lot. I push myself into kind of areas that I don't feel comfortable with. Somebody always told me if you're not standing close enough to the edge, then so it was you don't. If it doesn't feel dangerous, you're not. That's it. If you don't feel, I need to go back to slide 3. If it doesn't feel dangerous, then you're not standing close enough to the edge. So it is that idea of constantly kind of proving yourself, improving yourself. And there was another lovely quote that I read recently, which was, "I travel in order to improve myself." And it sort of resonated with me really. I thought, when I sit in all these airports and I've got my passport kind of like nervously clutched in my hand, and I know the anticipation of kind of where I'm going, this is all part of my story, and this will build into everything that I do. So even if you're cooking a meal or chatting with friends or watching a film, how you're philosophizing your brand and how you're putting your brand together will be coming through all of those parts. Everything kind of relates. So it's back to that relating and remembering and retelling. Everything that you do in your life, everything that is relating to you will then come out through your brand as well. So, for example, Tina Turner, we all know who she is. She has her own personal brand. That's totally different to who she is sat at home in, I think she lives in Switzerland. But she's now got a musical which launched in the West End last year. It's now about to go to Broadway. So people are learning about her story. There's also books, and there's also a physical film as well. Freddie Mercury, I don't know if anybody's seen Bohemian Rhapsody. I wasn't a big Queen fan, but I watched the film on board a plane just the other day, and was completely drawn into that story. I had no idea of the relevance of what he had gone through in relationship to Live Aid. Now, I lived through the Live Aid period, and I thought it was just a concert and it was to generate money for charity. But when you see how other people's stories relate to that and what their struggles have been, then you really start to kind of understand their stories. So Tina Turner, Mary Queen of Scots, another one. So everybody's kind of, their stories are being retold, and they're being told long after they've gone. And for me, that's where brands kind of live on. So a great legend brand has lived on far longer than the kind of original founders. So Steve Jobs is a great example. I mean, personally, I think he was outstanding in terms of what he achieved. And Apple, love it or hate it, you can see where his story kind of started and how he related to it and how he's helped us remember it, and we all now retell it in either a good light or a bad light, depending on kind of your philosophy with Apple. So in a nutshell, a great brand is just a great story well told, and that's your role. Just out of interest, how many people, just a show of hands, how many people have their own business and they are everybody who is here representing a company as an employee? Hi, 2, great. So it's still relevant, but are you quite influential in in how the brands work? Okay, so something that I was listening to a podcast, and they were referencing Pixar. And Pixar, I'm sure you all know, create animated films, long feature films, and all of them tell a very deep story on a number of levels. There's a sort of child level that is kind of quite comical and it's quite easy to kind of to follow, but as an adult I always get that sort of secondary kind of level where they really go quite deep into a story and they sort of get you thinking and twist your kind of mind a little bit. And something that I learned is that they follow something that's called a story spine, and I thought I'd share this with you. So every good story we kind of know as children starts with once upon a time. And there's always that element of kind of intrigue and what might happen, and they're going to be villains, so there's your shade, and they're going to be heroines or heroes. Thankfully there's a lot more heroines these days, which is good. There's always a kind of light and a shade. there's always a bit of an underdog as well. Cinderella's an underdog. When you think about all the kind of the struggles and the strains of these individuals, and that kind of comes through in your brand as well. Just be very open to the sort of vulnerability of your brand. You don't have to be picture perfect each and every day. You can have that honest, humble, and I think if the majority of us all in here are running our own businesses, then that humility, that sort of honesty really does play a massive part in how you tell your story. So I thought I'd share, this is what's called their story spine. So it starts with once upon a time blank. So you're all invited to kind of think now personally from a sort of your own brand perspective, and you now fill in the blanks. And Laura and I have worked together previously, so we thought we'd play a little role play here just to give you an example, but at the same time, do feel free to fill in your own blanks. So it goes along the lines of once upon a time, there was a girl called Laura, and she was sadly diagnosed with cancer, but thankfully recovered and is now in remission. So once upon a time, there was a girl called Laura who survived cancer and now is in remission. Every day, she believed that Bath needed a stronger, better initiative in order to share and help others. One day
I wanted to make sure that no one was alone during or after cancer treatments, and I wanted to make sure there was a cancer community to help any gender, any age, and any cancer in Bath.
And was introduced to Good for Nothing, which is an initiative where Laura and I met forces. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's a wonderful initiative. It's national, but they have what they call chapters, and Bath has a chapter. So they host them at Boston Tea Party. A number of local businesses or initiatives are invited to stand up on stage, do a short pitch, and then the audience are there with the intention of helping them creatively through marketing, build a website, do whatever. So this is where Laura and I connected. So one day Laura stood up on stage in a pair of killer heels. I was quite emotional because a very dear friend of mine had been diagnosed that month. So before even Laura had put the mic down and sat down, I was pounced on her and I said, I'll do whatever I can to help you. So because of that, Laura now has a well-defined, branded, websited, pull-up bannered, flyered, t-shirted, ballooned brand, which until finally you hope to have physical premises and the opportunity to hit more and more lives within the Bath Southwest arena. So that's kind of Laura's little sort of story spine, and I think it really helps to kind of just sit and take a moment to work out what yours is, work out where you've come from, what happened to kind of get you to where you are today, and have a little focus on kind of what that journey might be. And one thing I always say, that until finally whatever flag you put in the ground, or whatever post you think you're going to get to, you'll never get there. But that's the beauty of it, because your goals will always far exceed what you achieve. You'll always be pushing and trying to get there. But that's what leads your brand forward. There's never going to be a finish point. You never kind of want to be that Olympian that gets the 5th gold at the Olympics, because then that's it. What's after it? There is nothing to achieve in that final success. Your success comes daily and through all the kind of steps. And keep it simple. This I came across, and I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but this allegedly was attributed to Ernest Hemingway, and over lunch he set a bet with his lunch friends that he could write a story in 6 words. Now, this hit me so hard. I don't know why. There's so much intrigue in this. I'm not going to fill in the gaps, because my version of how I relate to this is personal to me. But those 6 words, it's so simple. It's 3 sentences or 3 phrases. So all I'm saying is, keep your story. You can keep it really simple. You don't have to egg it. You don't have to put everything that you kind of brought to get you to that stage to kind of build that story. It can be really, really simple. So on that, the key for me is always really good brand housekeeping. And I'm a bit of a stickler for this. I love grids, I love folders, I like things ordered. And if anybody has come across Marie Kondo, I bloody love her. She's so cute. She sits and has a little prayer in your house and kind of like blesses the home. But everybody laughs now. If I pack to go abroad, then my suitcase is immaculate. pants are all like folded and ordered, they're all color coded, my shorts are in one little spot, and I adore going to somewhere like Muji because you can get all of your toiletries all in tiny little ordered capsules. Now, that aside, that it's, without sounding too OCD, the importance is it gives you that visual opportunity. If you've got all of your brand, what I like to call sort of style toolkit items, all ordered and all sort of under control, then it's far easier to kind of jump into what you need to do. It's like having your desk kind of like planned and ordered. If you're called to do a report or to run to and do an event, or actually to do this talk, I panicked about this. When I threw myself into it, I thought, I have no idea where I'll start. But then when you actually look at kind of what you've got out there, you realize this story kind of idea was already starting to come to fruition. The chairman's niece whispering over there kind of like pushed me into another sort of zone. So I kind of realized then that I had all the bits, and it was then just a case of bringing them into kind of order. So consistency for me is kind of key, and that isn't being repetitive. That's really important. Don't feel that that means that every logo has to go in the same place. Every color has to be replicated the same. Be kind of playful with it. Write this word down, risotto. It's going to come up later. I'm going to share something really interesting with you. But it is that. This is what I'll come back to. It's having your ingredients and kind of knowing how things harmoniously go together. Now, there's professionals that do this, and there's people that think they can do this, and that's the danger. You don't have to work with the big boys. You don't have to work with the big agencies, but work with people that you trust, or be really honest with yourself. Is this a skill that you think you can do? Now, interesting, I was at an event recently, and I came across this lady who'd made these beautiful pots. And she asked me, she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I do brand. She said, oh, I think I can do that. And I went, okay. And she said, but I'm not very good at it. So, my website's a mess. And I said, that's interesting because, I use plates, but I can't do pottery. So I choose not to. I let somebody like you, who has an artistic talent, make my beautiful pots. And I'd spin that the other way. It's like, you don't need, if you're the potter, you don't need to do your website. I can't do plumbing. So therefore, I get a skilled plumber in to kind of do it. So be careful of who you bring into your team and who you bring into your tribe. Tim and I had a conversation literally just this week about kind of connecting with your tribe and surround yourself with people that you really do trust and you kind of, are on that sort of, I don't want to sound too fluffy, but on that same energy level, and they kind of get it. You're not having to convince or over-articulate each and every time. So that will kind of guide you into the sort of consistent. And I've sort of written down, think musical or film score as well. That opening kind of, if you go to a musical, they have that overture at the very beginning, which gives you all of the little tasters of what you might get later on. That's kind of your opening slide on a presentation, or it's the opening kind of homepage image. So that's kind of where you'll set the tone. But then after that, those melodies are kind of drip fed into other areas, or they might be turned on their head, or they might throw something completely different in there, but it'll still feel harmonious, but it might just accelerate or decelerate just so that you've got a bit more rhythm. So Pitch at Palace, I know Polly mentioned it earlier, this is the initiative that I work with the Duke of York's team. It's been 5 years in the making. It's been an incredible journey. It culminated just last year we had our 10th major UK event, and that was hosted at Buckingham Palace. So you can imagine the nerves of today were nothing compared to the nerves of that day. But it's no different to, it's a client, it's a brand, it's one I'm very passionate and very proud of. But just here, there's a kind of, it's not a perfect screen, but there's just a few examples of how we deliver the brand across the UK, but also this is delivered in 61 countries. Now, I've never had the pleasure of traveling with the Duke's team to all of these different countries to actually deliver these events. But seeing the film footage and the sort of Twitter feeds, I know for a fact that the replication of the brand is consistent. So it's no different to You go into a Starbucks, you know the coffee cup will be the same, the barista will be the same, the coffee standard will be the same, the flooring will be the same, the temperature of the actual coffee shop will be the same. So every element is always consistent. So you've got from biscuits where they were iced with the brand, to literature, to events, to lanyards and pin badges. China took on board the brand itself and then evolved it into doing tote bags that they use as giveaways at all the events. We even have the Grenadier Guards that then are juxtaposed against the media walls where people can go and take selfies and spread the word and all that sort of thing. So that's what I would call kind of consistency, and that demonstrates how you can really start to play. Once you've got confidence in your brand, then you can really start to play around with the sort of consistency of it. So one thing that I find time and time again is that clients get very nervous of kind of going to market thinking that they're just not ready yet. They just haven't got it kind of where they need to be. And I always say to them, but good is good enough, because I remember in the day when supermarket shopping was about to go online, and Sainsbury's were gathering all of their logistics, and they were getting all their vans branded up, and they were getting all of their vehicle drivers, and they were making sure that all their internal comms are all working. Tesco grabbed a couple of vans, stuck some logos on them, and just got out there. And they took that kind of lion's share straight away, because first to market tends to kind of have quite a kind of key advantage, but make sure that you're connected with your brand still, make sure that your story is still being told, but you don't have to perfect it. This, interestingly, is a real exercise. There was a photographer. The photograph on the left is the actual girl, and there was a series of teenagers who were invited to take their photograph that he took a picture of and run it through Photoshop and filters and produce it to a level where they thought it was presentable online. Now, I was shocked at what she produced. It's alien. It's the human eye. I don't know if you can do it. I mean, you can walk down the street and go, oh, she's had her eyes done. He's done his eyebrows. That's not a real hair. That's a boob job. You can kind of tell when people have had nips and tucks. I think there's something in it. We're very, very good at spotting kind of over-perfection. And it's not a kind of humbling kind of feature, I don't think. I think there's something beautiful about a brand or a story that's got those little sort of mistakes in it and those little sort of foibles, because we're all human, and we're all of our brands are relating to other humans, so they're relating to sort of human traits. So it will make you more endearing, and I think it's that humbling aspect that will then allow you to be remembered by your audience as well, and that's the little bits that they might retell. So going back to that kind of original relate, remember, retell element. So key thing for me is failure is part of that process. All of your successes will be completely dependent on how many mistakes you make. I'm pretty proud that everything I put out, there's always something in it. There's always something I'm not happy with. There'll be a line that I thought was aligned to something else and it hasn't, or there'll be a typo in it that somebody always takes a great pleasure in telling you about. It's like I hope you don't mind me saying, but did you know that on the cover you'd spell honor the American way? Had I? Oh, okay, it was intentional. So failure is part of the mistake, and it is that. Back to that potter, it's kind of like, how many pots do you think she kind of made and broke and collapsed on the potter's wheel before she kind of got to that perfected pot? Or do you think there's ever a perfected pot? Is there always going to be that one, right, I've finished, that's it, that's the perfect sculpture, that's the perfect painting, that's the perfect brand or message or campaign, I don't need to do any more, I can sit back and you can all just sit and watch it now because that's all you're going to need to do. So it is that consistency, and I've written down this word and I hate this word and I don't want to hate it because there's not a word that replaces it, but you've got to be authentic. And time again you'll hear this word, and if I can find a better one for it which doesn't sound overly fluffy, like be true to yourself, be really honest with yourself, and allow your brand to totally relate to who you are and what your beliefs are and what your proposition is, because that authenticity is what your audience will completely latch onto and home into. So whilst doing my research for this, okay, I hope there's nobody Japanese in this audience because I don't actually know how to pronounce this, but I think it's kintsugi. So I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's an ancient Japanese art of repairing broken items with gold. So instead of throwing the piece away, they actually repair it with gold, and that item lives on. So they celebrate the failings in it, or they celebrate the sort of historical journey of that. So for me, this perfect little cup has got the most beautiful story then that can be told time and time again, and long after the person that made that cup, this will still live on. So that little cup's brand, that little cup's story, has a memorable element to it that can be retold time and time again. So I've touched on this previously, and for me, this comes up time and time again with a number of clients. One in particular, yesterday actually. What I find is a client will come with a product that they want to get to market. So they're totally focused on the rational element of it. They know what it needs to do. They know how they want their customers to purchase it and what they want them to do with it. And they have this all prescribed in their head of how this is all going to work. And then they kind of miss out that emotional element, that emotional idea of how this product's going to weave into their lifestyle and what they might use it for. They might use it in a totally different way. They might find a different element within it that they can interact with. And it's that rational, emotional element that I think it's really key to remember as you build your brand, as you build your brand story. Don't just focus on the how and the what your product is or your service or your event, but remember how emotionally you can deliver that and how emotionally your audience will trigger to that. And listen to them as well. Really listen to how they interact with that. And if you're on social media and you've got that opportunity to allow them to converse with you, or if you're at an event, then make sure that you give your audience an opportunity to offer back or share back their thoughts. And that's how your brand will then evolve, because the more that you listen and you're not just constantly on transmit, which I see a lot of times with sort of client campaigns, they just think, I just need to tell, and then the world will listen, and then once they've listened, then they'll get it, and then that's kind of it. This is why I kind of find this difficult, because I'm doing all the talking. I'd love to kind of, I'm getting a few nods, so it kind of reassures me that I must be somewhere around about. So masculine, feminine, light, shade, heavy, soft, fast, slow, loud, quiet, academic, emotional, put it all in there. Make sure that you're really using your kind of human feelings and your human traits and your authenticity to kind of deliver that. So Pixar recognized these six emotions, and these are the ones that you can feed from. These are they're real. We all have these. We have these each and every day. And the reality is, the top three, anger, disgust, and fear, we kind of think are the kind of bad ones. And I don't know if anybody's seen the film Inside Out, but sadness wins the day. Sadness is the one that allows everything to kind of turn on that kind of pivot point. And I try and remember these all the time in every brand that I'm doing. You know, toothpaste is sold on fear. It's sold on fear and it's sold on happiness. They either make the promise that if you don't use this toothpaste, you'll have gum disease and your teeth will fall out. So they sell it on a fear. Or they'll sell it on a happiness. Use this toothpaste and you'll have the whitest teeth and the biggest smile and your teeth will be immaculate and perfect. So think about some of the brands that you follow already, and you'll realize that they already tap into these kind of human emotions, and this is what then makes them relatable, because depending on where you are on your journey and whether it's a tribe, you know, the brand is a tribe that you want to associate, then these will start to resonate. Now I layer on to that these 9 as well. Now I use these far more with clients. These 6 behavioral fundamentals were defined by Desmond Morris back in 1967, so the year I was born. And he studied apes, and these were over a period of time, and these were recognized as behavioral fundamentals within the sort of the tribal group. And just to layer onto that, if you think these don't relate to brands, these in particular are brands that use at least one of these fundamentals as a kind of key player in how they tell their story. Now, what I always say to clients is you can have 3 of these, because I don't believe any brand will live just in one area. So, for example, if you had somebody like Airbnb, I'd say tribalism is, imagine it, if you've got your 3, you've got that perfect triangle. So you've always got one that's going to sit at the peak, and you've got 2 that are going to sit in support. So tribalism tends to be the one that they kind of offer out there first. So that's the one where you're invited to kind of join in to this kind of this shared arena, this shared kind of collective. You can come and be part of this community. And then in addition to that, they put in kind of curiosity, I would say. So when you're traveling, you've got that opportunity to investigate and explore. And I would say possibly maybe protection is kind of in there as well. They're very clear on what their sort of safety element of that is. If you're going to go and live in somebody else's house, then we've put in place the sort of protectors that you're not going to kind of be at any risk. So think about these 9, layer in your other 6, and then just work out when you're kind of putting your sort of your brand story together, which one might live at the peak and which other 2 might live in support, and you can rotate those round as well, depending on which one you think might be more appropriate to the marketplace or the story that you're telling at that time. I had this yesterday. I had a client that said, we just are finding it so difficult moving forward. And I said, well, why? And they said, but there's no path. We just don't know how to keep getting to that next level. And I said, but that's perfect, but you want to be disruptive. So how can I say that there'll never be a path? There can't be a path or any signposts or any lighting, because that would imply that somebody's been there before and that journey's already been preset. If you want to be disruptive, you're making your own path. So it's something to bear in mind that it can be a struggle, but if you know what your story is, and you know, remember I said there's that flag in the ground, if you know it's kind of the other side of these woods, and there will be that clearing that you might get to, then just keep pushing forward. But bear in mind, if the slog is so hard that it's disruptive to yourself, then it's not the journey that you should be on. So I sort of caveat that with, be very cautious of how true and honest you're being to yourself. And some people just throw money after bad money and will kind of get nowhere. So it's a case of exploring and investigate lots of different areas. For me, music, art, theatre, travel, as I mentioned before, is like a massive one for me. It allows me to be really observant of other cultures and see how they operate. I travel a lot to America, and I'm always just intrigued by their history, their sort of shortened history. It relates a lot to how they kind of deliver their brands and their brand stories. It has quite a sort of, I don't mean this to be a dismissive word, but it tends to be kind of quite shallow, insofar as the depth just hasn't had that time to kind of like really sort of knit in, and they've not got, their reference points are as far back as ours, from a sort of British kind of brand standard. So it's not a criticism, it's just a kind of, it's an observation. So when you are cooking or when you are watching a film, just be cautious and sort of and observant of how these brand stories kind of come together, and follow your gut instinct as well. Be really sort of honest with yourself in terms of what you're seeing and how it resonates with you, and what the good points and the bad points are. And silence is a really good one. That's where the answers come. I'm going to bring Laura back in now as a kind of case study, because when Laura stood up on that stage and she told me what she wanted to, well, she told the audience what she wanted to achieve, She had a brand in place then that was called Eat, Move, Glow, and its proposition was to be a cancer toolbox or toolkit for women. Couple of things kind of jarred with me when I saw that, which made me even more kind of keen to kind of help her, really. So the first thing I kind of flagged up was, Laura, how knitted are you to what you're calling yourself? Because I'm one of those people, I don't know how to say this politely, but I can't think of it, so I piss on people's bonfires. I kind of, but in a kind of kind way. It's kind of from a place of goodness, good and kindness. So I kind of thought, this just won't go anywhere. This is just going to sit in a very small niche. I can't think of, men get cancer as well. And I can't think of many men that refer to themselves as glowing. Maybe there's a few. And also just the fact that it was only going to set itself for women, I thought was a massive kind of shame, really. And if it was going to be for the Bath area, then it was going to just knock out so many individuals. So we had a number of lunches and coffees, and we would sit there, and there would be silence. There would be moments of, but what were we going to call it? And I said, okay, Laura, right, let's just start with the why. Let's go right back to the very, very beginning. Why do you want to do this? What is your purpose? What is your story? And she said to me, I just want people to get it. I just want people to understand that if you're wearing that nylon wig one day and it itches or it hurts, then we get that. Or if you want to laugh incessantly one day and then cry within the next 5 minutes, we get that. Or if you've just come from a diagnosis and you think your world's going to fall apart, we get that. Or if you want to just sip champagne and giggle with your mates, we get that. So I said, perfect, Laura, we're going to call it We Get It. And there was silence. And I left it on the table, and I went to the toilet, and I came back and I said, so what do you think? And from that moment, we nailed it. And love it or hate it, this now works. Laura has a wonderful brand now that lives throughout the Bath community. She's hosted a number of events. They run yoga workshops. We've got all of the team in T-shirts. They're all wearing badges. We've got flyers. Bottom right-hand corner, thanks to the lovely James at the back of the room, we filmed Laura, and now on the website, her story can be told. So what I'd say is, the key for me is the answer to your brand already lives inside all of you. So my role, whenever I work with any client, is not to invent something new. And time again, they'll turn around and go, oh God, is it that simple? So when we come up with the answer, it's like, how did you come up with that? I said, but I didn't. All I've done is define what's already inside you and pull that out. And then my role is then to just design around that and to bring that to life and to give that some energy and some emotional attraction and some sort of communicative elements. So we're going to do an event, Laura. We're going to have big, brassy T-shirts so the world can get it. And everything you see here, one thing I'm very, very proud of is anything that I design, I have an answer for. So the reason why it's in black and white, because it's exactly that. There didn't need to be any colour. There didn't need to be any sort of fluff or frippery around this. And James, who sat at the back of the room, came up with the logo itself, and it was based on a thumbprint, a fist print. So it was that kind of like sassy punch down onto the table. Do you know what? We get this. And there's a boldness to this brand, and there's a kind of there's a strength that we didn't want to have in that earlier kind of fluffy, scripted Eat, Move, Glow. So that's just a sort of case in point that the authenticity of your brand, you already all own. So I can guarantee you have all of the answers, and sometimes all it takes is just that silent moment to just let it ease out of you and trust it. It's a really difficult place to go to sometimes. People think, I've got to talk it through, and I've got to get stuff down, and I've got to go to workshops and talks, and that's all good. This sort of thing's all really good. Join, I would say everybody in this room could relate to each other because you're all running your own businesses, so all your stories will all kind of relate and have sort of reason. So, do you remember I said that word risotto? So I was cooking the other day, and I realized that to make a risotto is exactly how you make a brand. You have to gather your ingredients. You have to go back a stage. You have to have a cupboard like mine where all the labels are turned to the front. And all the herbs are in one place, and all the spices are in another, and all the lemons are in a bowl, and all of your wooden utensils are in one drawer, and heaven forbid anybody's turned a fork upside down and left it in the cutlery drawer, or put it even worse in the spoon section. That just cannot happen. So gather your ingredients, go into your cupboards, and remember that's your brand cupboard. Go into your brand cupboard and look at all of the bits that you've got to play with. What colours, your brand, so your logo is not your brand, by the way, so your logo is in there, your colour palette, your typography, your vocabulary, and also your tone of voice, and your emotional kind of elements as well, and how are you going to pluck out, what meal are you going to make, so what story are you going to tell, and what elements are you going to bring out there. So for today's meal, we were going to have lemon, chili, pea, and God, it sounds disgusting. Lemon, pea, chili, pea, prawn with a bit of parmesan, risotto. But guaranteed, it was actually really tasty. And the secret with has anybody made a risotto? Yes. I was really scared. I always thought it was like one of those kind of like meals that the chefs make and you can't make. I know it is, but once you get, but you've got to have patience, haven't you? You've got to be really patient with it, and you've got to constantly stir it. So this is back, this is the analogy. You've got to constantly stir it, and you've got to make it with love. I was told that once by my partner. You've got to make it with love. You've got to want this to work, and you've got to know when it's done. You undercook it, it's quite brittle and hard and gritty. You overdo it, it's just sludge. So this is your brand. Be really cautious of your timing. Be really cautious of how much love you're kind of putting into it. And love is free. It's like that's the one thing that you can bring to your brand that will cost you absolutely nothing. And it will deliver time and time again. It's that human trait which comes through. Somebody said to me once that a pot made with love, you'll actually feel it. It will emanate out of that item. Also, if I'm putting a brand together, I've got to like to do, I've got to want to deliver that brand for that client. There's been 2 in my entire career that I've said, this isn't working. There's an emotional reason that I can't deliver this one, and it's not their fault. This is just I couldn't relate to it and I couldn't deliver it. So there was an honesty there, and they respected that, and we kind of parted on good way. Well, actually, one wasn't so good, but the other one was still okay. And delivering it with all 5 senses. So there's a lot to remember here. You've got your 6 emotions, you've got your 9 fundamentals, and I'm now throwing in another one, which are your senses. But these are the easy ones. And there's a brand that I always go to if I need to stay in a number of cities where these hotels actually are. I don't know if you've heard of a brand called Citizen M. So they're in America now. There's 2 in New York. There's 1 in Paris. There's 1 in Amsterdam. There's 1 in Glasgow, of all places. And there's 3 in London. Great range of hotels. They deliver on all senses. They throw humour in. So down in the corner, you've got the pillows that are on your bed. The chap on the back, the barista jet lag's cured here. They've been very clever at kind of like weaving their story in. The black, the white, and the red is predominant wherever you go. Every hotel that you stay in, even though there's a quirky difference, so there's different art, but it's still kind of born from the same stable. It's as if I imagine it is, the same interior designer kind of like traveled around and sort of put an eclectic collection together. So they know what their brand cupboard is. They know what they need to take out. And the other thing that hit me the other day, I was in New York with my daughter in January, and we walked in and I went, this place smells just the same as London. And she said, oh yeah, we have our signature scent, and it's pumped out, and it's subtle, but it's enough for you to know. And then somebody said to me the day, oh, I really like your aftershave. And I get that comment so many times, so I stick to that one now. So I've kind of integrated that into my personal brand, because I think, well, if it works, then I'm going to kind of go with it. And who doesn't like the odd compliment? The Colour Factory is another one. This is a really interesting one. It started in San Francisco, and it's now, it's got residents in New York. And all they do is they just sell if you go to their website, you get a picture of New York, and it just has coloured circles all over it. So the premise of going to this event is just to celebrate colour. But then layered into that is all of your childhood experiences, all of your imagination, and all of your kind of intrigue of exploration and adventure. And it's just a series of rooms that you walk through. So it's kind of like sort of art installations. But each room's got a different theme. One's based on sound, one's based on taste, one's based on sort of exploration. And it all finishes with this incredible, this ball pool in the bottom left-hand corner is the size of this room. Now, I swear to God, it's like you just turn into this 5-year-old kid. Everybody is like ripping their shoes off and just jumping in. It's about this deep. And then the beauty is that you get given afterwards this blue ice cream with a blue serviette, with a blue spoon, in this pale blue environment. And for me, it's just it's like living in like consistency brand heaven. But it feeds every single emotion that you have as a kind of child. And you realize that the relationship with it goes far deeper than just on a visual level. And then I'm telling you the story now, so I've remembered it and I'm retelling it. And that's really kind of what's key to all of this. So just two perfect examples, I think, Citizen M and Colour Factory, who kind of do that. Now, I hope none of you are thinking this, but this is one comment that I always get from a number of kind of clients is, but you're talking like we're Apple. You're talking like we're the big boys. I'm not one of the big boys, and I'm proud of that. I had an incident. I was at a retreat in Thailand, and one of the other visitors kind of came to the retreat, and over supper one night, she said to me, so what do you do? And I said, I sort of do brand, sort of, at that stage, I was doing the, I don't really know what I do kind of thing. And she said, so you're in London then? No. So but you know so-and-so? No. Oh, but you know that campaign that they did? No. And it was 3 massive red kind of like fear buttons that triggered in my head and in my heart, and I kind of went away and thought about it, and I approached her the next day and I said, actually, do you know what, I don't play with the big boys, I don't play in that big world, and you don't need to. If your story is true and if your story relates to exactly where you need to be, the only difference with you and Apple, well, there should be no difference, is that they are consistent, they know what their story is, and they're distinctive purely insofar as their story is connected to where they want to be, and that's exactly where you need to be. It's the same principles, it's the same discipline, it's the same focus. So there's no reason why you can't be the Apple of tomorrow. And for me, I picked these 9 out. These are 9 brands that I kind of have in my sort of visual arena at the moment. Spoke are a range of, they're trousers, shirts and shorts. They're available online, but they're tailored exactly to your fit, which I think is a great idea. You put in your dimensions, you put in your height, you put in your weight, you put in your leg measurements, and then they only show you the cut and the shape that will suit your body type. And they're delivered to your door, and if you don't like them, you send them back. Boston Tea Party are the guys that host the Good for Nothing. They were the first, I hope I'm right in saying it, I think they were certainly in the Southwest, but I think it was nationally anyway, they were the first coffee chain to remove all single-use cups. Now, they lost a massive amount of revenue in those first couple of months, but now it's turned completely around, and now Costa and Starbucks and all of the Apples, all of the big boys are starting to follow suit. So what I'm saying is, you can be the change. The beauty of everybody in this room is that we're all quite small insofar as we are only either one or a number of, is anybody more than sort of 10 employees or around the sort of 1 to 10-ish mark? Yes. So you've got that agility to sort of skip through the gaps. These big boys have got boardrooms and shareholders and kind of the bigger picture that they think they've kind of got to tick boxes with. But we've got that beauty of sort of skipping through, and we can make those changes. back to that story, when I'm in that Thailand retreat, every morning we were given a coconut with a plastic straw in it. And day one I went, I don't need the straw, I'm a big boy now, I can drink out of a cup, so I don't need the straw. And they said, well, really? Well, why are you going to drink your coconut? I said, well, you just tip it over and you pour it into a glass and I drink it from the glass. I'm here for 21 days, so I've saved you 21 straws. Day 2, everybody's frowning at me going, why are you drinking yours out of a glass? Why haven't you got it out of the fancy kind of tropical coconut? I went, because I'm saving some dolphin's nose and I don't want all of these straws ending up in the ocean. And they went, so day 2, this person sat next to me, either side, they said, oh, we won't do it. So I'm thinking, great. That's now 3 times 21. What's that? 63. And then I suddenly planned it out and I said, okay, there's 10 of us on this retreat. They're open for 11 months of the year. And we were, by the time I left, well, actually by day 4, they'd removed all the straws were replaced with paper, and that was 6,000 something or other straws a year. Insignificant maybe for that one little retreat, but how many retreats are there in Thailand and then across it? So all I need is those people to kind of then move on and tell that story again, or take that back. And within a year, straws are now not in bars and places, they're on request. So all I'm saying is you can make that change, you have that agility, and if it's part of your social impact, which, if I'm going to bang one little drum, we are the ones that can make that change, and it's really important to kind of consider what your kind of effect is on your personal sort of audience and that bigger kind of like business landscape as well. So interestingly enough, all of these brands were all around, are around today, but how many of these do you think were around 15 years ago? Anybody think more than 10? Everybody going for none? You're an easy audience. Yeah, none of these. And yet they're all pretty much part of our everyday vocabulary. So, you know, they've all got a brand story. They're all relatable. 5 minutes. Right, I'll go straight into the recap. 4 words. Who will you relate to? How will they remember you? And where will you be retold? That's the key to your brand story, and that's the thing that I would there's the 3 questions I would just keep on repeat in your mind, because that will keep your focus out there. It'll keep you listening to your audience. It'll keep you keep the interest going in yourself, and make sure that that others kind of understand where you are. Love is the one that I mentioned earlier, and it is the free one. You've got to love your story. If you don't, nobody else is going to. They're not going to get it. You've got to believe in it, and this will cost you nothing. It's an absolute guaranteed. So it's an easy win. Loyalty is that one that will, once your audience is starting to retell you, that's the bit that that's going to take you a little bit further. So share it. Listen to what your audience has got to say, and that's a real mistake, which I realised at the very, very end. So I threw in the emoji, because why not? That's my honest truth. I make mistakes, and I'm kind of quite proud of them. So there's my kintsugi. I couldn't afford gold leaf, but I can afford a crappy little emoji. And legend, it's really, really simple. Make that promise. Start really simple. Keep it simple. And the lovely Marie Kondo, she says it sparks joy. If you don't do that, then it's not going to really take you to much further. And I'll leave you with this: nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. I try and live by that mantra every day. It's a tricky one sometimes, but it's worth remembering. So thank you very much.